So, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, first of all, to CTM for inviting me to share this experience with you and to discuss it with you, sorry. It's a great honor for me to be talking with Matthew and to have Jane chair this session. And I'll share with you something that I've been working on for many years, that I'm really passionate about, traveling exhibitions. And this proposal came to me, the idea came to me after having read a very interesting article in the French newspaper Les Echos a few months ago, which was precisely talking about incredibly successful touring exhibitions, blockbusters that have huge success around the world, breaking records and so forth. One of them being David Bowie is, I think we'll talk about that in a moment. And of course it's super impressive. We all like to read and see these articles, but then I was thinking, well, you could also come to the conclusion that basically super successful tours are the privilege of very big museums that can handle such big productions. You know, you need quite a staff and quite a budget to actually put these things together. So the question is really, can smaller museums make such big international hits? And most importantly, what can traveling exhibitions bring to smaller museums? Because it's great to have an exhibition abroad, but I believe that you can get much, much more. As you can see, the world is never enough. So how do I click this? Oops. So first of all, let me tell you about my museum. We're based in Lausanne, Switzerland. We're a relatively small museum with 50 staff members, 800 square meters of exhibition space. We're located in this 18th century building. Not for long anymore, we're going to move to a brand new place as part of a museum hub, the Musée in Lausanne. And it just so happens that we're one of the world's leading museums in the field of photography. Since 1985, we have worked very hard to improve public understanding of photography through innovative exhibitions, through key publications and engaging events. This is actually one of them. This photograph was taken on June the 28th. We organized our one-night photography festival in our gardens and welcomed 11,000 people in one night. So this is the reality of my museum, physical reality in Switzerland, and my team and myself always think of this reality as only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Let me show you what I mean. If I can make this work. How do I make this work? So 2014 was a crazy year. We had 49 openings all around the world. On average, we present 20 exhibitions abroad and 3 to 4 exhibitions in Lausanne. But once again, we're a small museum, so the traveling exhibitions team is the same as the external affairs team. So that's my brilliant assistant, Holly Roussel, an intern, currently Jessica, and myself. And traveling exhibitions represent only 30% of my responsibilities in my museum. So my point here,
excuse me, sorry to interrupt you, but put on that light again, and it's impossible to sit here for us. We can't see it.
Oh.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay? Thank you. So my point here is to say that the success that we're having abroad has nothing to do with resources, or very little to do with resources. It's not a question of money. It's not a question of budget, it's not a question of staff members. I think it's really a question of content, first of all. We produce very strong content in the field of photography, and it's also a question of strategic vision and organization. And this is what I want to share with you this afternoon. I would like to show you my strategy to put this together, which is threefold. We'll talk about production, promotion, and placement of traveling exhibitions through a case study, which is the Regeneration exhibition series. So Regeneration, just to give you the concept very briefly, Regeneration was born in 2005 from a very simple and powerful and crazy idea. Can we predict the future of photography? Can we know now who the next Robert Capa, who the next Edward Steichen will be. To do that, we contacted art schools all around the world, asking them to send us the best students. We studied all the portfolios, analyzing them blindly without any information about who the people are, where they come from, what they studied, only looking at the artworks. And on every edition of the show in 2005, 10, and 15, we made a selection of very representative projects and very powerful artists whom we think we will still be talking about in 25 years from now. So the show always starts in Lausanne, and then it travels around the world. So it traveled around the world quite extensively. As you can see, it went to 24 different cities. We're talking here about the every edition of Regeneration accumulated numbers. 24 cities. It went to Beijing, to New York, to Paris, to Cape Town, to Monterrey. This represents 12 countries on 4 continents, and on the basis of the attendance figures that we received from collaborating venues, over 500,000 people saw this show. Actually, 138 people saw this show around the world. So a big international hit, but not a big international, very bombastic museum. So there's an interesting tension here. Let's go through the strategy. I'll walk you through the logistics of the show so that I can make a point here on production. Starting with Regeneration 1. Regeneration 1, ironically, was an exhibition about very contemporary photography, emerging photography around the world, and at the same time it was a very classical show. It was print-based photography, framed, on the wall, created. We had one exhibition set produced, which was not produced by the museum. It was a series of works on loan from the artists. We showed this in Lausanne, then it traveled to 10 different venues, mainly in continental Europe. It came back to Lausanne. Thank you very much, end of the story. It was a great success, and this is how most exhibitions have traveled. Nothing too incredible about this. So Regeneration 2, in 2010, we learned a lot from the tour of Regeneration 1, and we really took advantage of something that was happening very strongly then, new technologies, digital technologies, and we decided to produce Regeneration 2 in such a way that it could tour, which was not the case with the first exhibition. So the works were produced by the museum on the basis of digital files in agreement with the artist, which meant also that we could control or guide the size of the artworks, always in an open collaboration with the artist. We produced 2 created sets, one set that traveled in Europe, the other one that traveled in the Americas. We also developed a digital kit, in other words, a USB key that could enable you to produce the exhibition on site, which was an easy way for us to send the show to venues overseas for whom shipment would have been too much of a constraint. This gave us total flexibility in terms of programming as well, and we also gave flexibility in terms of framing. The show could come in 3 different sizes to best accommodate different venues, providing all the 80 artists were presented. So here you can see that the show went to 18 different venues. The first reason for this, of course, is the content, the fact that Regeneration 2 was taking advantage of the success of Regeneration 1. People were expecting the second edition, but you can also see that the actual way the exhibition was produced had a direct impact on the outreach of the tour. So there is an important shift here. We're not traveling existing works of art. We no longer are. We are including the tour and the traveling nature of the exhibition in the actual production of the works of art. And then we move on to Regeneration 3, which is a totally different story. Maybe you can get it from the images you see here. Regeneration 3 is more focused on new expressions of photography. What can photography be now in 2015 around the world, as opposed to who's the next hot photographer? And only 30% of the artists in the exhibition actually show print-based photography. Photography here is installation, it's sound pieces, it's textile pieces. You can touch it, you can smell it, you can literally walk into it. So there is a very strong object-based reality to Regeneration 3, which of course we will respect in the development of the international tour, which is ongoing now. We will present it in October in Mexico, thanks to a digital kit that we are working on right now. But this is just to show you that we could not set the same goals as for Regeneration 2. Of course not. I mean, we will never see this show in 18 different venues. Of course, I hope we will. But the actual nature of the artworks pushes us to think differently about what we can do with this exhibition. So let's just get something out of the way. Of course, the nature of photography is very interesting to use in the field of traveling exhibitions. The reproducible nature of photography helps you to, produce multiple sets, to develop digital kits and all of that. But this said, even if this show is about photography, I think we can draw a few more general conclusions. First one, you need more than just great content for a successful tour. This, to me, is something really important. It's not only about the artwork and the content and the curatorial statement, it's also about how the work is produced and what the artworks actually allow you to do. And this is really important because this is the only way you can set, realistic goals for your tour. It's useless to say, this is a great contemporary photography show and we're going to present it all around the world if the actual nature and the conservation restrictions of the artworks do not allow you to go all around the world. But this draws me to my second point, which is a constant discussion with curators. You really have to talk all the time with the people who are actually producing the content to get it right from the very beginning. The possibility of a tour during the planning stages is really essential. This will save you so much time later on, and it will enable you to be successful in the right way. Sorry, I skipped the third point. The third point, which is just as important, is to keep the momentum going. The first opening in your museum is just the first chapter in a very long story. I can give you an example right now. 18 months ago, we opened in my museum a big Philip Hufschmid retrospective, which will be presented in less than 2 months now at the Jeu de Paume in Paris. For my colleague Anne Lacoste, who curated this show, Philip Hufschmid was 18 months ago, and in a few weeks from now, she's going to open a big show in Lausanne. She's all over the place getting that ready and done. So if this were news just now that we're going to Paris, it would be a catastrophe. So you have to keep the story going and talking with your teams, making sure all the different departments collaborate. Because the point basically is to save time and energy on logistics, so you can then invest all this time and energy, because you have restricted staff and budget, into a promotional campaign that is in line with the actual logistical goals you can reach with your exhibition. And my way of talking about promotion is always to think about this question: who has an interest in seeing the exhibition travel? Of course, you are interested in having the exhibition out there, but who can be interested in helping you get it out there? That's always my big question. So if we think about this through Regeneration, we could say just something obvious first, that of course museums plan years ahead. They program up to 2017, 20, 2036. You always need time before you start the campaign to actually let them know what's going on, so you can eventually fit into their program, which is fine. You usually have a name, you usually have a concept, a theme, something to go with, but you don't at all in the case of Regeneration, because you don't know who's going to be in the show. There's only 1 year between the call for application and the opening. And anyway, once they are in the show, with all due respect, nobody knows them because they're emerging artists. So you can't rely on content and you can't rely on names. You have to do something else. So that something else to me was simply to break it down. And if we break down the Regeneration concept, we can think, okay, so what is it? It's a group show, it's a book, many group shows and books out there, so that's not enough. It's a cycle, it's an international tour, it's a map, it gives you a map of what's going on out there in the field of photography, okay? How is it run? It's run by a museum, that's very important. It's not a festival. It has open and fair rules, that's something really essential. It takes a bet on the future, it's long term. And there are these three key partners: the museum, the artist, and the art schools. Good, but that's not enough. So this is why I always push myself and my team to think about why. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to, first of all, challenge the notion of contemporary photography and give an account of what it can be. And secondly, we're doing this because we want to help young photographers develop their careers and create new work. We're actually looking at the museum as a launch pad So we're connecting people through this exhibition. You don't even have to know what's inside the exhibition to know that this is the purpose of this show. So we're connecting people around a very simple, innovative, and useful project. So in other words, we're kind of building a community, and when you are facing a community, most of the time you want to join it. So my key promotional message has always been, join us. And this is a truthful, authentic message that joining this community has an impact on everybody. So we have the key message, good, but to whom are we going to give it and how? We're still in promotion here, and I'm using again the very basics of the content, the very basics of the exhibition. Who are the key players? The key players are the artists and the art schools. It all comes from them. So my question is, why not empower them to be ambassadors to this project and show them that they can play an active role? The artists can understand that they know their countries and the cultural scene better than anybody. They can advocate for the show. They can be proud to have the show come into their own country and say, hey, I'm part of this big international thing. So my job here is to touch base with them and to empower them as much as possible to carry on this message. The art schools have great galleries to present exhibitions. Art schools may want to promote their educational activities, and we'll be very happy to collaborate with a museum that will welcome a show, so they will have ideas with whom we could work, for example, to present the exhibition. And all this know-how, all this knowledge in the field is something that you can't get from your computer. You can go on internet all the time, that's fine, but if you don't have eyes and people on site, your outreach is very restricted. Can go a step further with institutions. Institutions can have an interest in helping you develop the tour because it can be a great opportunity for them to win a lot of time. It's always easier to take on a show than it is to produce one, always. But here the important thing is to look out of your professional field. Photography can work in museums, in festivals, it can work in contemporary art museums, it can work in organizations, it can work beyond your comfort zone. So we activate a huge network every time, and we always take it a step further. We could go on to embassies and publishers. What's an ambassador's interest in helping you develop the tour? Well, an ambassador might want to communicate on Switzerland, the fact that Switzerland is such an open platform for artistic dialogue. So having them help you target institutions in their country where they're working is so helpful. Plus they speak the language. I don't speak Chinese, I don't speak Arabic, I don't speak many languages, and that is a great, great push. Publishers will be happy to see the exhibition tour because they can sell more books. The more venues, the more books they can sell. So maybe they have good ideas. And we can go on and on and on. So the idea is to identify as many target groups as possible who will support you because they have their own interest in helping you do your work, and eventually the tour becomes a very, very powerful catalyst because you're building a huge web of people who are supporting you in your efforts. The aim here is really to understand that these people can contribute actively in their own interest. And again, this doesn't come from the exhibition content. This comes from a vision and a strategy that they agree with. So to these 3 key points about promotion: express the purpose of your exhibition in a simple way. The more support groups, the better. Inspire your network to support you based on their own interest. I would add that you can always guarantee promotion, but you can never guarantee a number of venues. And maybe a number of venues is irrelevant. It would be totally irrelevant to think that I have to do 19, I have to get 19 venues for Regeneration 3 because I got 18 for Regeneration 2. That's an important point. The average cost of this campaign is 0. It didn't cost me anything to do that, it's just contacts. And all these people we are activating in our networks provide very interesting exposure, and this in itself is already an important sign of success. My third point, placement. As you can see, Regeneration went all over the world in many different countries and different contexts. Securing any venue to start a tour would definitely be a mistake, and there are 3 key questions I always ask myself to make sure I choose the right places. The first one is, does this venue represent an interesting opportunity for the artist? For instance, for a young photographer or any young artist, having a show presented in New York is a huge thing in the city. And it's just as important to be in Arles at the Festival Les Rencontres d'Art, where everybody goes in the field of photography. So is it in the artist's interest? First thing. Second thing, is it of strategic interest to collaborate with this venue? Collaborating with Beijing, the Shaoxiangdi Photography Festival was of huge strategic interest because it helped us to discover a whole new cultural scene that we didn't know and to discover who's who in Beijing. Third question, does this provide an interesting financial opportunity? We ask for a loan fee when we travel on exhibitions. They represent a percentage of the initial production costs, and this is a standard practice in the field of traveling exhibitions. So my rule of thumb, if I can say yes to at least 2 questions, I'm pretty sure that it's a good opportunity for us. So traveling an exhibition is clearly not a neutral process. It has an impact on the artworks, on the artists, and on the museum. This is really what we're talking about this afternoon. I'd say that there are 3 key things. First of all, traveling exhibitions and the international tours you can organize will really strengthen your professional outreach. This means that it will expose your museum to key professional figures in your field and beyond, who then will help you get on more opportunities and develop yourself. We're not talking here about the audience. I'm not sure that people in Shaoxiangdi Festival understood that the Musée de l'Élysée produced Regeneration 2, although our logo, our name was everywhere. That's not the point. People don't look at that. Who looks at the credit lines at the end of a film? Nobody. People watch a film. And that's fine, because we're targeting here stakeholders and professionals, not the audience. Second thing, staff learning and know-how. This is so important. When we travel in an exhibition, if we can go along with it, we learn so much about how other people reinvent the wheel, how other people work in different business cultures, how they engage with visitors, how they think their exhibition installations and so forth. And all of this is something you bring back to your institution, and you can take advantage of it in many different ways, independently from traveling exhibitions. And finally, you regenerate your museum in a big way when you communicate actively about traveling exhibitions. It's very comforting and powerful for our stakeholders to know that we are in Paris, London, New York, and Beijing. I can convince sponsors this way. I can convince my authorities to help us because we mean business. We're in Lausanne, but we're also all over the world. So I'd say that presenting an exhibition in another venue is good, but it can be much, much better if you use this to make new contacts, to discover a new cultural scene, to plant seeds for other projects, and to exchange business know-how. In this sense, an exhibition to me is so much more than a selection of artworks and a curatorial statement. It is a social process. An exhibition is a development tool, and this is really how I consider it. The museum goes into the world to become stronger within, and to me, the art of being contemporary is really to remember that museums are all about people, and that regardless of your size, you can really, really always punch above your weight. Thank you very much.